Welcome to the show, Ivy Nation Sports Talk up and rolling. It is Friday, and that means a rapid fire day, along with Vince D'Addario, who's looking very festive today. I'm Sean Stiers, less than festive, but I get it. I beat out on my hat, I guess, anyway. So,
yeah, it was Valentine's Day, and we already spent some time with my wife this afternoon, and we went out to eat and all that fun stuff because I get to cover a high school basketball game tonight. So
nice.
Yeah,
Happy Valentine's Day.
I won't be fighting the amateurs out there tonight. We did it this afternoon. It's funny. We walked into this restaurant and, I'm looking around, and it obviously was not terribly busy at about 1:00. And I leaned over to my wife. I go, well, we just significantly brought down the average age of the people in this building because it was a lot of older people going out.
Getting the early bird special. Nice. Very nice.
Great. Yeah, it was great. But it was a great meal. It was nice to get away from the kids, obviously, for a little bit. And so, yeah, we'll take any time we can get.
I've got pizza coming home tonight. My very first Valentine's, when my wife and I were dating, I did a candlelight pizza and a box of chocolates. That was like my big move back on our first Valentine's Day together. So every year since then, I have to buy, I know, right? I have to buy her a box of chocolates, which I've already taken care of. Nice. And then she texted me after she went to work, do you want me to bring a pizza home for dinner tonight? And I was like, do it, baby. Do it.
Put a little candle in the middle. Just make it happen. You are such a romantic. I love it.
That's right. That's right. Irish English says, in the spirit of Valentine's Day, should we list all the things we love about Irish Breakdown? He says he'll go first. He loves the punctuality. That, of course, is we were starting the show at roughly 5:03. I mean, that's
pretty good
for this joint. It's fairly punctual, I think.
Just saying.
John, the trip to Pittsburgh was nice, especially after the way things turned out. It got a little exciting. Jesse was in the audience, though. He and his fiance were there last night.
What were they doing in the Berg?
Behind me. I never really pieced together exactly why they were going to do a Valentine's thing tonight. And I thought that initially she had some work to do in Pittsburgh, and that's why they were there.
Okay.
But it didn't sound like she was actually working. He was actually working from the hotel room, and we got lunch together. So that was that was good because we ended up staying in the same hotel. Totally they booked their reservation, and it turned out to be the same hotel we were staying in. So that was pretty convenient. But then, as it turned out, they were going to stay in town to do like a Valentine's thing tonight, but her grandmother's brother died in West Virginia, and they did the funeral today. So they had to drive from Pittsburgh down to West Virginia. And now they've got to get back because he's the basketball team that he's coaching has a game tomorrow morning. So
gotcha.
Got a long
grandmother's brother.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Like a great uncle.
Yes, I guess so. That would be. You're exactly right. All right. Well, we've got just a ton of Notre Dame stuff to talk about.
There's been a lot of news
today
in like the last 24 hours.
There really has. And, there's even more that kind of added up since you've been slacking the last couple of days and left this 5:00 window open.
Wide open. Well, when you don't have a co-host, it makes it very interesting, and just didn't really have the wherewithal to find another co-host, to be perfectly honest with you. So
you just got to put the lasso on Trevor, man. Like that guy, you can bend him, you can break him, you can shake him, you can do anything, you can turn him upside down. Trevor will do anything you want.
I think I just felt bad, like after doing a 3-hour and 56-minute show yesterday, to give him like 3.5 minutes off, and then have him get fired right back up with another show. Like I felt bad, so I didn't even ask. Which I could have taken advantage of young Trevor, but I just felt bad asking, to be perfectly honest with you.
I see Salty is getting
Oh,
salty. Why not just post the
man.
start time at 5:03? Well,
I'd like to make you guess. Keep
Salty.
you thinking. Man.
Sometimes we don't, like when we log in on the back end, we start talking about
I
something and we
know.
just
That's what
for a little.
happens.
That's what happened today. We
Yeah.
started going off on a little bit of a tangent. I'm like, all right, let's start this sucker. So
No, we never go off on tangents. That's not a thing.
no, not at all. Not on the show or off the show. Never happens.
Yeah, it's not a thing. Come on.
But we've got Notre Dame football. We've got Notre Dame women's basketball.
Yeah.
A big record at least tying performance by Olivia Miles. Sonia Citron had a big one last night. We've got Al Golden. We've got Mike Mickens. We just got so much different stuff that we're going to talk about. So let's just jump into it and quit beating around the bush. So the news broke this morning that Notre Dame is set to hire Detroit Lions Director of Scouting Advancement, Mike Martin, as the football team's new general manager. Martin spent the last 4 years in the Detroit Lions front office, where he helped turn a perennially, tripped off my tongue there a little bit, losing organization into one of the top teams in the NFL over the last couple of years. So, Vince, I mean, going to an NFL guy is a bit of a turn for Marcus Freeman after he went the James Blanchard route initially to try to get Blanchard to come up here from Texas Tech. So what do you think of this move with Mike Martin?
I think this is probably the trend, with the way things are going, especially in, with programs that are big business like Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, like the big blue blood type names, Georgia, teams like that. I think this is probably going to be the way things are going to go. And, judging by what he was able to accomplish or be a part of what was accomplished up in Detroit, he's obviously got a good pedigree. He knows how to run an organization, and that's kind of what college football is becoming. I mean, let's be honest. It's pretty much the minor leagues of the NFL. I mean, more or less. And now you've also got NIL, and you've got, all this roster management, and the roster sizes are smaller, and, all of these different things. It's becoming more and more important to have a GM style person and to bring somebody with NFL pedigree who knows kind of that landscape. I think makes a lot of sense. I do.
I think so as well. And I guess I wasn't in town Wednesday night, but I heard they had the stadium lit up, Notre Dame Stadium, and, everything was, kind of shiny and bright over there. And apparently it was because they had Mike Martin and his wife in town, and they were wining and dining and doing all that kind of cool stuff over there. I will say that now people can just talk about Brady Quinn, doing the analyst job on NBC rather than making him the general manager of Notre Dame football. So that's fairly exciting to me. We don't have to hear about that anymore, Vince.
It just amazes me that people assume because you were a good player that you would make a good fill in the blank.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Do you want a celebrity or do you want, and this is nothing against Brady Quinn, obviously.
Right. No, not at all.
Do you want a celebrity or do you want someone who's actually been in the dirt, grinded the film, done the job? That's correct. That's the difference in this whole thing. I mean, we all know Brady Quinn is a really smart guy, and again,
all
looks great on TV. He's got a nice chiseled jaw and all those things. But you don't need a celebrity in the position. No. This is not a figurehead. In fact,
that's the last thing you want.
Yeah. You don't need a baby kisser. You need someone to go out there who can identify the kind of talent that you need for this. Because, I think the number one priority of this specific position is identifying the talent. And that's what gets me excited about this, because this guy knows what talent looks like, what real talent looks like. First, he played in the SEC, so he's got that. He's obviously been in the NFL for a long time, for 20 years in total. He's worked in this kind, in these kinds of positions. The only knock on him is that it has been the NFL level that he's done that, and not the college level, not kids coming out of high school, basically. But, I was kind of thinking about this morning, as my mind started, kind of turning through the gears on this whole thing. like think about Dylan McCullough. McCullough had obviously worked in college, but he also spent the 3 or 4 years with the Kansas City Chiefs before he came back to college. So Dylan McCullough knew what an NFL running back looked like. And look at what the room looks like that Dylan McCullough has recruited as a result. He's got at least 2 NFL running backs in that room right now, in Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And it started with the fact that Dylan McCullough knew what that looked like. He knew, what real high quality, high skilled running backs look like. And that's what he's got in that room. So again, has this guy worked in college like this? No, but I mean, in addition to identifying the talent, he'll obviously, he'll have a hand in, managing NIL, allocating NIL with other specific people who focus on that as well. But, roster management, all these different things. But, again, I think talent evaluator, player evaluator is at the top of the list. And, again, like look at where the Detroit Lions were forever and look at where they've been the last couple of years with a roster that I think you could argue after the Philadelphia Eagles is probably the most talented overall roster in the NFL, the way they have scouted and drafted talent the last few years.
Look, I completely agree with everything that you said. And when you're looking at what college programs are now versus what they were 15, 20 years ago, they're a lot closer to what an NFL program is as to what a college program is. You know what I mean? Like if you took a Notre Dame program in 2025 and you compared it to Notre Dame in 2010, and then you compare Notre Dame 25 to the Lions in 24, for example, right? You're going to see a lot more comparisons to Notre Dame 25 and the Lions 24 as opposed to Notre Dame 2010 and Notre Dame 25. You know what I mean? Just from like you never had to worry about roster management really in the past. Yes, you had 85 scholarships. So you had to figure that out. You bring in as many walk-ons as you want, as many as you can house in your, locker room. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And you didn't have to worry about NIL. You didn't have to worry about all the additional coaches now because anybody can coach on the field now, right? Like you've got all these different assistants. Yes, you've got your specific, the 10 official assistants, but then all these analysts now, they can all coach on the field, so you've got all these analysts, you've got the recruiting department, you've got the roster management, you've got NIL, you've got all these different things that did not exist 10 to 15 years ago. They did not exist. And so now you're looking at a program with numbers like people that's very similar to an NFL program. You've got assistant linebackers coaches.
Well,
and you've got
the revenue
coaches.
sharing, coming in, not just NIL, but you've got that as well. And again,
all that stuff.
Who's dealt with that kind of stuff? How you balance a salary cap, essentially, an NFL guy, an NFL front office. And I think that's going to become even more important going forward.
I mean, all of these different things much more resemble an NFL team right now than they have ever resembled a college team.
Right. I like this. Salty, actually, point for Salty on this one. Notre Dame is more like an NFL program than the Raiders right now. Probably true. But,
Pete Carroll would be pissed at you right now, Salty.
I know. But compare rosters, and, I think that it's a fairly valid point. But, the comparisons that have been made in the sort of, just general mentality between Marcus Freeman and Dan Campbell. We've talked about sort of Marcus Freeman being, like the equivalent, like the Dan Campbell of college football, just in the way they go for it on fourth down with the special teams fakes and, but also the way the rosters are built. You obviously want high-end skill talent wherever you can find it. But again, much like the Philadelphia Eagles and, like teams like the 49ers, not as much the 49ers this year because, they obviously had some issues, but just the physicality, the way that Detroit wants to go about its business. They want to bully you up front. And essentially that's Notre Dame, So again, you bring a guy from the NFL who's had that kind of eye for those kind of players, because you need the head coach and the GM, the guy who's scouting the talent, to be sort of, as much on the same page as possible when it comes to the kind of guys that you want in the program. So I think that's got to be a piece of this as well. Like he comes from that kind of organization that has been looking specifically for those kind of players to have that kind of mentality to push you off the ball. And I mean, that obviously became a trademark of Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame team in the playoffs. And JP and Joe Allen, on my comment about, I said at least 2 NFL running backs in Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. JP says Aeneas Williams 100% an NFL running back, and Joe Allen says he would go almost as far as 3. Williams is going to be a beast, I think. I would only push back. It's like, I think Williams can be good. To say right now that he's 100% an NFL running back, I think there's still a little bit of ways to go, but there's obviously a lot of budding talent there as he gets more opportunities potentially going freshman forward. I mean, I would not say he's 100% an NFL running back as we speak, but I would say that he's got a bullet.
I like his trajectory.
Yeah, exactly.
If he stays on this path, he will be, and then you throw in Kedron Young as well. You could make an argument that there's 4 guys that could be on NFL rosters at some point. No doubt, right? But you can't just take this room and transplant it to the NFL and have all 4 of those guys. I don't think that's fair. That's not even fair to Williams and Young, to be perfectly honest with you. So I would push back on that, but I would say the trajectory lends itself to saying all 4 would end up in the NFL at some point.
Right. So now, as expected, this general manager position is going to be different from, remember, I mean, they promoted, basically they gave Chad Bowden a bunch of money. And so they gave him, extra title as well as, extra duties and all that kind of stuff when he got the money for staying here instead of going to Michigan last year. So this is going to look different now as they split these duties up. Martin's expected to handle, again, like the talent acquisition and all these other things, the roster management, NIL, and the revenue, all those different kind of things. Freeman reportedly wants to hire Kenyatta Watson from Auburn to be the director of recruiting, player personnel, whatever the title ends up being, somewhere along that line. Essentially, Watson would apparently handle much more of the specific recruiting aspect of it, whatever that position ends up being called. So do you like this split? Do you like splitting up the duties like that?
I do, because I think that having one person in charge of all of that with the way things are trending would be too much. Chad Bowden was able to do it, but I think even if he would have stayed, I feel like they probably would have split that job at some point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I just feel like things are moving in that direction, and I think this is smart. You don't want to put too much on the plate. You know what I mean? I mean, like having one guy kind of in charge of the recruiting section, and then having one guy or gal, depending on how they want to do it, sure, in charge of the roster management and kind of the current program. You know what I mean? Like, that would be an awful lot to put on somebody's plate with all the new stuff like we just talked about with the GM position and everything they're going to have to deal with. Adding recruiting onto that as well, I just think that's asking a little bit too much.
I think so as well. I think it makes a lot of sense to split it up like this because, again, like there's just so much that comes with this. Again, like it's one thing to be the guy who's sort of in charge of recognizing the talent and that kind of thing. But because there's so much that goes into the GM role, I mean, just like look at Martin and where he's been in Detroit. He was essentially an assistant in that office, and that, the director of scouting advancement, and scouting is going to be a big part of what he does in the GM role here at Notre Dame. But he was an assistant to the GM, basically. And so now he elevates, and you're essentially bringing in, again, whatever the title ends up being with this, an assistant to the GM, where you have other people working under him. And I'm sure there are going to be plenty more people working, in the recruiting office as well, just like there were, under Bowden and everything else. Interesting twist, though, if it ends up being Watson, considering that Watson was the lead recruiter in getting Deuce Knight to flip from Notre Dame to Auburn, and now potentially coming up here.
Good point. I didn't even really think about that, to be perfectly honest with you. And the way that whole thing played out, like I'm okay with the way things kind of went down and
sure
and all of that. I think I don't want to get down that road as far as Deuce Knight and all of that stuff, but a very interesting tie that I hadn't really thought of until you mentioned it. Very interesting.
But I mean, he's job of it. He's again, like, he's been a big part of Auburn signing back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes according to On3, and they had a top 10 transfer portal class this year. So like, again, that's all going to be part of this whole thing, not just the high school kids, but getting portal guys and all that kind of stuff as well. And again, it's why it's going to take, definitely more than one and even more than two people to do this. There are going to be a lot of people involved in this, in this new role. So I think it's pretty exciting, especially when you see the kind of people that Marcus Freeman is going after to fill these roles.
I think he's doing a very good job of kind of, thinking outside the box a little bit, and he obviously has a plan, right? It didn't work out with Blanchard, and it wasn't like he does, oh, now what kind of a situation. You know what I mean? Like, he obviously had a plan and has, at least it appears, executed that plan pretty darn well. So I'm pretty excited with the way things are trending right now. I think Marcus Freeman has done a very good job in this leadership role with who he's hiring and the manner in which he's hiring, because he's made some mistakes, and now it just feels like he's very confident in what he's doing. And again, I like the fact that he's kind of thinking outside the box a little bit and not just, okay, Chad Bowden left, I got to replace Chad Bowden. Well, you know what? Why don't we split this into two and make this, find people that are good at each thing and kind of go from there. And then, Marcus Freeman can be that CEO type as well. So I just feel like he's doing a good job with it right now.
By the way, Irish English, I feel like this over-under is set a little bit high. It says over-under 6.5 tangents during the show.
Like 1.5, I think, is a much more bettable line.
I think 2.5 tops would be the limit there.
So we got one, I think, today so far. Can't count before we hit play or before we hit live. That doesn't count.
Right. Exactly. Doesn't count. Nothing that happened before the show counts.
Right.
In this. So Al Golden won the Broyles Award Thursday night as the nation's top college football assistant coach. Here is part of Al Golden's acceptance speech.
It's very hard to do anything for the first time at Notre Dame, but we were able to win 13 in a row. We were able to win the Orange Bowl. We were able to win the Sugar Bowl, obviously played for a national title, hosted our first college football playoff game, all of those things. But all of that would not have happened if it wasn't for the players, the student athletes. People ask me all the time, in this age of transactional sports, what it was like to coach at Notre Dame. And I'll say this, it was the greatest 1,000 days of my career to be associated and to wake up and coach those young men every day. Because there is a place in northern Indiana where young men go that still think it's important to be great in the community. They still think it's important to be awesome in the classroom. They still think it's important and vital to have a spiritual component in your life. And it's all fostered by a head coach that provides a culture. And I was just blessed to be a part of that for just a brief moment. And for them, I'm grateful for this opportunity to be up here. And I can't thank the players enough and the opportunity that they provided, not just myself, but my family, to go on that journey with them. And for that, I will be forever grateful.
I feel like Al Golden just kind of cut a Notre Dame promo there.
Man. And he did that off the cuff, by the way. I did watch that that speech, and it wasn't like he had prepared remarks. Like, he just got up there and just started talking. Right. And I was very impressed by that, actually.
Yeah, I thought so as well. And, I've heard I've heard kind of the negative Nellies, some people saying, well, if he thinks that way of Notre Dame, then why is he leaving? And
because he had. I just get so annoyed with people.
Hardcore Notre Dame fans,
God.
And I think, diehard college football only fans will just never get the fact that as great as you think Notre Dame is and as awesome as you think college football is, which they both are, not everybody thinks like you, especially the guys who work in the business. Everyone's got different career aspirations. You may love college football and think the NFL stinks or whatever. Okay, that's your opinion, but the NFL is still the highest level of football that there is. There's a huge difference between being the manager or the hitting coach of a AAA baseball team and being the manager or the hitting coach of a Major League Baseball team, even the worst Major League Baseball team there is, because you are in the big leagues. Just, go watch Bull Durham and hear Crash Davis talk about it. You get new balls and, it's like legs for days and, whatever else. But, like Al Golden was drawn to Marcus Freeman and he excelled under Marcus Freeman. But at the end of the day, he went from being a head college football coach to a position coach in the NFL who needed an opportunity. So he comes to Notre Dame, becomes defensive coordinator, not just a defensive coordinator, but an elite defensive coordinator, wins this award, and now he's back in the NFL as a defensive coordinator with, we assume, what are aspirations to ultimately become a head coach. He can love his time at Notre Dame and still have bigger career aspirations because they're not mutually exclusive.
Two things can be correct at the same time. Yes. And in this case, that's it. And his family, by the way, lives in Cincinnati. You don't think he appreciates the commute now more so than before? You know what I mean? Like
45 minutes maybe instead of, 4 hours or 3.5 or whatever it is.
You can love Notre Dame and you can love everything about Notre Dame and you can appreciate, the time that you're at Notre Dame and still have aspirations otherwise. Like that's okay. Those things are okay. There's no such thing as a lifelong assistant. Okay, it's just not going to happen in one place. That's the exception, not the rule. Let's just put it that way. And he was never going to be here forever. You should not be upset about the fact that he's not there anymore, but appreciate what he brought while he was there. Okay.
A little Dr. Seuss wisdom. A little Dr. Seuss wisdom you got going there.
That's right. All the places
Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
That's right. Seriously. I mean, he was part of a staff that took you to the national championship game. And Notre Dame's defense has been at the precipice of elite. You know what I mean? Like, be happy about what he did for your program, and then be happy for him that he's off doing whatever he wants to do, man. Like that's okay. He'll still be a Broyles Award winner at Notre Dame. Like that's never going to go away.
I mean, be glad that he didn't leave you to go to another national championship contender in college football, And I think most people wish him well for the most part.
Yeah,
like Salty's kind of, echoing the sentiments. He's like, when someone says it's the best 1,000 days of my career, it sounds like he would say, I'm now back in the NFL, which is not as good as Notre Dame. See, again,
I had the best 1,000
years. Are not.
Yeah, the best 1,000 days of my career. But guess what? There's better coming up. Like, it's okay to think that there's better days ahead, too. You know what I mean? He's a defensive coordinator in Cincinnati, where he has one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, arguably, on the other side, which makes your job that much easier, by the way. And
if he just fields a respectable defense this year, they're back in the playoffs.
100%.
And that's, there are plenty of people who think that Golden's going to get fired after this year because the Bengals defense stinks. Well, of course it stinks. Why do you think they fired the other defensive coordinator?
Looking for a defensive coordinator in the first place.
That's exactly right. You expect him to come in and regardless of what's on the roster, put a more respectable product on the field. And it is the NFL, like you can obviously draft players, you can acquire free agents, you can make some trades and things like that. But, like Dan Quinn in Dallas a few years ago, he replaced Mike Nolan, became defensive coordinator. the defense got much better from one season to the next just by having a different coordinator with a different philosophy and mindset in there and the way he related to guys. And now Dan Quinn, of course, is a head coach again of a playoff team, and in the same division, so it's like, just because it's the NFL, man, things change so quickly. And again, it's why you go out and get a guy like Golden, who Zach Taylor obviously has experience with, because Golden was on the staff before. So he knows what kind of guy he's getting, and again, like look at Kellen Moore as an example, because again, there are plenty of people who think, well, Golden, the defense is going to stink. They're all going to get fired. And then what's that going to get him a year from now? Well, again, if you show your competency on your side of the ball, regardless of what happens, from more of a macro picture with the team. Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator with the Chargers last year. Brandon Staley gets fired. Kellen Moore still gets another job as an offensive coordinator, same position with the Philadelphia Eagles. They win a Super Bowl, and now he's a head coach. So, like, you can, as Brian says, look, like, if you got the chops, you got the chops. If you can coach, you can coach. We've all known that Al Golden was running an NFL defense, and he has shown, that he can run an NFL defense. And if he shows that he has at least any modicum of competency next year, regardless of what happens with Zach Taylor and the rest of that staff, he's going to be fine. He'll land on his feet once again. So I don't think this is like some bad move just because he's going from a national championship college team to an NFL team that struggled defensively last year.
Let's just put it this way. I'm not betting against Al Golden at this point. He's got a great reputation now. Not that he didn't before, but he's got a better reputation now, even as when he left as a Super Bowl participating, position coach with the Bengals, comes to Notre Dame, and now he's a Broyles Award winner as a defensive coordinator in college football, went to the national championship. Like, he's got a great reputation. So even if the entire staff at Cincinnati gets fired at the end of this year, I guarantee you the defense will be better than it was last year, and he's going to get a job as a defensive coordinator somewhere else. Like, that's going to happen. So I'm not betting against Al Golden. I've learned enough to know that much.
That's right. And again, it's always worth, mentioning that there were plenty of people who were betting against him even after that first season. And look what the last 2 years turned into. So I don't think there's any reason to bet against him.
No.
Fill in the blank in that same speech last night. It's blank that Golden says Irish secondary coach Mike Mickens is going to be up for the Broyles Award very soon.
I had trouble with this one because I wanted to say, like, puzzling, because both him and Marcus Freeman have said basically the same thing, and yet Marcus Freeman went out and got a new defensive coordinator.
So is he still?
You know what I mean?
Coach? Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it is a little puzzling. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. We all know that Mike Mickens is a fantastic position coach. You know what I mean? Because of what he does, both on the recruiting trail, finding guys, and then turning them into NFL level corners. I mean, the Broyles Award usually goes to a coordinator, I feel like. But I'd have a hard time arguing with the fact that Mike Mickens isn't one of the best assistant coaches out there in college football. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so
exactly.
I get the sentiment that he has, and I think eventually he will be a DC someplace. But man, throw as many flowers as you can his way so that he sticks around at Notre Dame. I mean, that would be fantastic. But yeah, it's still a little bit puzzling though, just because it seems like he's held in such high regard, and yet they keep going out and finding different defensive coordinators.
No, I know. And the fact that he doesn't have experience being a coordinator seems to be a big reason why he is still a position coach. But obviously he had Texas make a run at him. To me, it just feels like he's not long for being, appreciate it as much as you can right now, because if he's not going to have a chance to be a coordinator here, you can only keep paying him so much to be an elite position coach. At some point, everyone wants to be able to take that next step. And again, there's some similarities. What I was just talking about with Al Golden, being an NFL position coach, but not getting an opportunity to be a coordinator. So he had to go the college route to show he could be a coordinator to get himself back to the NFL. And, with Mike Mickens, you obviously don't want him out there coaching against you at some point. But yeah, I mean, if he's not going to get, some kind of elevated position on this staff, it just feels like sooner or later someone's going to swoop in and make him a coordinator.
Loyalty only lasts so long. You know what I mean? Like,
that's right.
I know he's
exactly
Marcus
right.
Freeman. I get it. And he has proven that time and time again. But somebody's going to come knocking at some point. It's going to be too good of an offer to refuse. That's what's going to happen. And if there's not a DC job opening at Notre Dame, he's going to take it. You know what I mean? He's going to take it. And you might have a chance to lure him back as the DC at some point. But, I just feel like they're playing with fire a little bit when it comes to Mike Mickens. And so far it's worked out in Notre Dame's favor. Mm-hmm. But, man, it's only going to be a matter of time, in my opinion.
Feels like it. Definitely feels like it. Thank you very much, Anthony Solomon, for that sticker in there. Appreciate you. So, fill in the blank. We started the week talking about the fact that Penn State running backs coach J1 Sider is likely to replace Dela McCullough in the same position here at Notre Dame. Nothing's official yet, but it's blank that Sider posted a photo of Notre Dame Stadium, a snow-covered Notre Dame Stadium, from an airplane to his IG story yesterday. And he also has a picture of Jeremiah Love as his Instagram avatar photo.
I think it's hilarious because it's like the worst kept secret, you know what I mean, on the face of the earth.
And his title on his Instagram still says he's the Penn State running backs coach, but he's got a picture of Jeremiah Love up there in his avatar.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious because, Notre Dame takes an inordinate amount of time, obviously, to do their vetting process and, all of that stuff. And we all understand why that was with George O'Leary and everything that happened back then. Okay. I would love to sit in a room and find out what that vetting process is and to find out why it takes so long, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's a side point, but it's obvious that he's coming and he obviously didn't get the memo that he's not supposed to say anything. I guess technically he didn't say anything, but like posting stuff on your Instagram is hilarious to me. It's absolutely hilarious. That obviously means he's in town. He's probably performing the duties of the running backs coach. It just hasn't been publicly announced.
Just a matter of I's and T's, Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, it's just. I
mean, I thought that maybe since they hadn't officially announced Sider's hiring, they were making a run at Brady Quinn to be the running backs coach. So,
I mean, he could be a Super Bowl winning, coach. I mean, we know this.
He could.
We know this. He's that good. He's good at everything, Sean.
He is.
He's good at everything. He wakes up.
There's nothing Brady Quinn can't do.
Yeah, he wakes up in the mornings, hair looks like that. Like, he's perfect in everything.
I bet he does, man. I bet he rolls out of bed. There's zero movement. And he's just,
he's the male Mary Poppins. I mean, that's really what it is. He's practically perfect in every way.
Doesn't have to do a push-up. He's in there with perfectly whitened teeth.
Yes.
Doesn't have to do any of the whitening tricks, none 100%. Of that stuff. All right, Vince. So 8 former Notre Dame players got invites to the NFL Draft Combine this week. You got Riley Leonard, Bo Collins, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, Benjamin Morrison, Mitchell Evans, Jack Kaiser, and Xavier Watts. Who has the most to gain?
I honestly think it's Riley Leonard, to be perfectly honest with you, because first of all, it's the Combine, right? So there's only so much that you can get accomplished at the Combine that's going to change people's opinions, okay? So, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, what are you going to be able to do as a defensive lineman at the Combine that's going to change anybody's opinion? Not a whole lot, right? The skill players, they can do some things, physically, and then, of course, there's the testing and all of that. But at the end of the day, what's the one thing that you can do as a quarterback? You can stand there and make all the throws that you need to make in an NFL game. Now, I understand it's a scripted thing. I understand, it's in shorts and, all of those things. I get it.
But there's a lot of
nailed it.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
Importance put on that thing.
Yes.
That's exactly
so much
right.
importance put on throwing a football in shorts and a t-shirt with no defense. I mean, and that's the biggest knock on Riley Leonard is his arm strength and his accuracy, right? That's the biggest knock on him. And what's the one way that you can kind of put some of those doubts aside? It's what they ask you to do at the combine. You know what I mean? So I think he's got the biggest, he can make the biggest jump out of all 8 of these players.
I completely agree because because of the passing numbers that he had this year, like that's predominantly what you're looking for in an NFL quarterback. It's a lot different than college. You can obviously win a lot of college football games, as Leonard showed both this year and at Duke with the style of quarterback that Riley Leonard is. But you go there to the combine, I just think like he's not going to turn himself into a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick. I don't see that happening. But at the very least, he can ensure that he does get drafted and he doesn't end up going the free agent route like Sam Hartman did last year. So, and I think that because of the kind of quarterback that he is as well, when he steps up and runs that 40, like he's got a chance to, I think that's where he, obviously the passing stuff is really, what can make or break him, I think. But when you add in, if he's just decent with the passing stuff, and then you add in a big 40 time, if he runs a big 40 time, which I think he will, then I think that he's got a chance to really elevate his status and kind of put some different thoughts into some different NFL people's minds as they look at him down there.
He checks off all the leadership boxes, right? And he's going to crush any of the interviews. He'll crush the Wonderlick, which we don't hear about all that often anymore. He'll do fine in all the off the field stuff. Like he checks every one of those boxes. He checks the athletic ability box, all of those things. And NFL coaches and scouts and all of these different things, they got extra time to watch Riley Leonard, and what he brings to a team and his leadership and all of those things, because they're all watching those playoff games. You know what I mean? And so maybe he wasn't on the radar of some coaches, and maybe now he is because they had some extra time to watch and see who Riley Leonard is and what he can do on the football field. But if he can come out there and show that he can be accurate and he can do all of these things, throwing the football, I don't know where he's projected now, but I feel like he can make a real positive move for himself. I really do.
I do too. I'll read the list one more time. Riley Leonard, Bo Collins, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, Benjamin Morrison, Mitchell Evans, Jack Kaiser, Xavier Watts. Those are the only guys who got invited, because there were some people kind of saying, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? No, Jordan Clark didn't get invited. RJ Oben didn't get invited. And I, like Indy Sailor, I was pretty surprised that Jordan Clark didn't get an invite. I was really surprised by that. Like both for the way he played and for the fact it's like, not that I'm not saying this in like, well, he should get an opportunity for nepotistic reasons, but his dad played in the NFL. Sure. And like when you play at a pretty high level and NFL guys know that you have that, that sort of lineage, I was pretty surprised that Jordan Clark didn't at least get an invitation to the combine. I was really surprised by it.
Yep.
Okay. So we got word this week that Notre Dame spring football practice is going to begin on March 18th. We already knew it was going to end with the blue gold game on April 12th. So what do you think about that pretty condensed timeline there?
That's wild, because over the last 4 or 5 years, we've kind of gotten used to a 2 practices a week kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now, in order to get your 15 practices in, you're going to have to go like 4 times a week.
Yeah.
In that time span. It's kind of wild. Like I said, I'm not surprised it's starting maybe a little bit later than it usually does, just because of how late the season went. We kind of talked about that before, but they're waiting until after spring break. Usually there's 1 practice before spring break, and then, they go on spring break, then they come back and they kind of ease into it. There's not going to be any easing into it. And so the other piece that I'm really fascinated to see is how much they're going to have the guys who were key contributors, starters on the team, right, that are back and should be participating in spring. How much are they going to be asked to do? Just because it's still, to me, so close to the end of the season. They didn't get a whole lot of time off. You know what I mean?
And I mean, they're pushing. I mean, well, they'll have almost 2 months off, like from actual practice by the time they, because again, March 18th, they played the championship game on January 20th, but they played essentially, 3 extra games. When you think about, how many extra games they played, and that's crazy because it's 25 total days. And so like you look at, I guess spring ball is a sprint and not a marathon, because like the whole
this time
spring practice season is going to be shorter than Notre Dame's run through the college football playoff. It's like 25 days total, so like it's very condensed. And I agree. They obviously need the time, and the veterans I saw on Instagram are just now getting back in the weight room and starting to do, their off-season conditioning and things like that. So it's the middle of February. So obviously that's been pushed back a few weeks, like not quite a month, but 3+ weeks based on when they finished and everything. So they gave them some time for their bodies to rest. But I agree. Like, how much are those veterans going to be asked to do? I mean, you do have some questions and some positions to figure out. Both lines have got to be, at least you've got to at least start to sort out that process. And obviously the quarterback part of this as well.
And that's got to be. Yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing for me is, okay, are you going to rest some of these veterans, that kind of a deal? Or are you going to allow these quarterbacks who are competing for a job, or at least the most high profile of job? There's other jobs being competed for, right? But are you going to give them the number one weapons that they're going to have? You know what I mean? Like, who are you going, surround them with, to see how they do in spring practice? Look, I think we can all agree that they're probably not going to announce a starter by the end of spring. And so you're probably going to have some fall camp as well, where everybody will be full go and ready to rock and roll. But what does that look like for the quarterback competition as far as who they're going to surround them with? I think that's going to be something interesting to see.
Yes, and I'm looking here, but I agree with in general sentiment with what you're saying here. Decaf, he says, remember, they're 18, 19, 21-year-old kids. I think they'll be okay. To an extent, I agree with that. But what you also have to
involved.
Right. Right. What you also have to remember is these guys went out and played a game where every play is a car wreck. And, threw their bodies around on every play, for basically an extra month plus of the season. Like I'm looking at Xavier Watts just as an example here. So I'm going to take the Indiana game out of it because like that would have essentially been the bowl game. I'm looking at snap counts.
Just the extra games, basically.
Right. So like the 3 extra games that, like Xavier Watts played 970 total snaps this season. So let me see. Here is 120, 170, 185, 189. So between Georgia, Penn State, and Ohio State, 3 of the more physical games of the season, just Xavier Watts played almost 200 more snaps in those 3 games. So like, just think about that, and then like you look at the offensive linemen who are going to be playing more, more than that as well. So yeah, while they're younger and they recover more, college football players at the FBS level have ever been asked to play as many games as Ohio State and Notre Dame just played this season. Like those 2 teams and those 2 teams only have been through it. So there is, there is more to it than, just like put an ice pack on it or a heating pad and keep on trucking. You do have to let their bodies recover a little bit.
And as DK said, all the practice too. I mean, not only were they playing those games, but they were practicing. And then you throw in the travel and, sleeping in hotels and all that stuff. I mean, it wears on you, man. And like after a 16-game season or whatever it ended up being, I mean, you need time to recuperate. Like nobody that is playing is 100% healthy at that point. Nobody, not one person. And so, you need time. Your body needs time to heal. I mean, there's obvious science behind it. And, that's why they track everything that these guys do. Salty said that, with all the quality guys they've got coming in, that you wouldn't be sitting if you're a veteran. I'm not saying that guys are going to just sit back and, hey, whatever happens, happens.
But Riley Mills and Howard Cross were both on rep counts in the spring last year.
Exactly.
Like they would take whole days off during spring practice.
Jeremiah Love does not need to be out there every period. Jarian Price doesn't need to be out there every rep of every period. You know what I mean?
Let all those young running backs get more snaps in the spring. Yeah.
Exactly.
Andy Saylor says the NCAA should have allowed playoff teams to extend time for spring practice, the extended for the portal.
Well, they did.
Again, like the sentiment I agree with, but you've still got to get it done in time before finals start and all those kind of things.
And here's the other thing. The portal is open, obviously, for 10 days, and I believe it starts just at the end of April, kind of a deal. Either way, you can say, oh, man, you guys played in the national title. You don't have to do anything until May or whatever. When the music stops, there's going to be seats that are, there's not going to be enough seats for these guys that want to jump into the portal. That's not fair to them. You know what I mean? Right. Like, you can say, just like they did for Notre Dame, like they didn't have to declare for the draft and all these other things, right, until they were done with their season. Like, they did extend some things. But everybody else is operating with that 10-day window of the portal from the end of April to early May. And if Notre Dame or Ohio State or whoever says, oh, no, we're just going to have spring practice through that, and you can jump into the portal in late May, there may not be a place for them to go, because those other guys are going to get scooped up and other teams are going to fill their holes.
And I think that's why they're doing that, because they could have pushed the blue gold game at least another week if they wanted to and spread this thing out, which initially I thought they were going to do. Like, they didn't have to put the spring game on April 12th. That, like, from what I can remember, and I've been here for
way earliest
25 years, this is the earliest that I can ever remember the blue gold game.
It's usually at the end of April. It's usually at the end of April. It's like the last Saturday of April, usually. So this is way earlier. And I guarantee you it's because of the portal. Because I had heard that it was going to be on the 26th, I think, is the last Saturday in April.
Right.
And the portal is before that. And it would have been like, whoa, like, what's going to happen? Like, it closes. Maybe it closes at the end of April. But, like, if you played in the spring game, you wouldn't have been able to even enter the portal. You know what I mean? So it makes sense that they're moving it up so that they offer their guys an opportunity that if they want to hit the portal that they can. So it's all based on the transfer portal, guys. Like, that's what it is. And it's also good for the coaches. They get a full spring practice in. They're going to know which one of their guys are jumping in. So they know what holes they have to fill with the spring portal window, So it's a 50-50 two-way street on this whole thing.
Joe says there could be snow on the ground during the spring game. There have been, in later April, there have been a couple of blue gold games where there has been snow on the ground, or if not snow, very cold. There have been at least 2 blue gold games I can remember where we had snow.
Yeah.
So, it's happened before, and that's later. I mean, the fact is,
April's hit or miss, man. Like,
anyway, anyone who's lived around here knows it could be 60 degrees one weekend and 25 degrees the next around here.
So. There was a track meet. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. There was this track meet scheduled for like March 15th. Just like, this is never going to happen, but we'll put it on the calendar. And it was like 60 degrees that day. It was beautiful. And then, you go to spring break, you come back like that second week of April, and it was like 10 degrees. It was awful. So you don't know what it's going to be like up here. You could have a beautiful day for the spring game. It could be 10 degrees. Like, it's a crapshoot, man. It's a crapshoot.
Absolutely is. Yes, it is. Fill in the blank. Olivia Miles and Sonia Citron combining for 12 3-pointers in Thursday's win over Pittsburgh is blank.
They are on fire. Like, it was unbelievable. And they kept talking on TV about how Olivia Miles is running out of 3-point celebrations because she kept hitting so many. And they were neglecting to really talk about Sony until the second half. And they're like, oh, yeah, she's really good too. Like, it was hilarious to me.
I mean, she wasn't making 8, but literally in the first half, until Miles missed that last 3-pointer of the first half at the buzzer, they were a combined 12 for 12 from the
It's
field.
unbelievable. Yeah.
With 8 3-pointers between them in the first half. Neither one of them missed until that last shot.
Well, I think Sony had 19 in the first half or something like that. She was the leading scorer in the first half, and they weren't even talking about her because all of the pub,
because Miles just kept hitting threes from all over the place. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about with the broadcast. I didn't see that, but
obviously, when it's a national broadcast, they're going to talk about Hannah and they're going to talk about Olivia. Like that's who they talk about, right? And so as the game progresses, of course, they continue to talk about. And Hannah struggled a little bit, offensively in this game, and so they eventually pivoted to talking about Sony, but it took till the second half for that to take place. So I thought that was pretty funny. It's like people forget how good she is. I mean, just how good she is. You know what I mean?
You know who knows how good she is? Here's Olivia Miles after the game last night talking about her teammate.
Listening to. Let me say what she didn't say. Sony is her. She's literally her. That's my dog. We came to Notre Dame to do this together. Our chemistry is insane. She does everything that this team needs to do, and without a word said. Sonia is incredible. Sorry, that's all I want to say.
Liv said.
I love that.
That was pretty awesome. And I just saw that this afternoon from the post game last night. But that's exactly it. Citron literally, we've talked about it before. She's so stoic with her facial expressions most of the time. Saw a few more smiles, I think, last night, the way she was playing last night. And she just, whether it's offense, defense, she just goes out and keeps, because like we've talked about it, how she obviously is going to draw typically the toughest defensive assignment from the other team. Now, that was different last night because Pitt's best player was the post player. So you're obviously not going to put Citron on her. But if it's, like a small forward to a guard, you're going to put, and that's so much of what she does. She's a glue player, like Niele Ivey has said. And then you get the threes like that. It's just icing on the cake. And it's another indication of, like you said, it was literally just from an offensive standpoint, it was the worst game of Hidalgo's career. She ended up like 3 for 12, I think it was. 11 points is what she ended up. So I guess it's not technically the worst. Her career low is 10 points in a game. That was last year, but it's her season low, 11 points. She was just 3 for 17 and she wasn't hitting and she was getting frustrated. But hey, you've got Olivia Miles and Citron to step up and carry you like that. And that's the thing about this team with the pick your poison is no matter what, like a player can have a down night. Maddie Westbeld got into some foul trouble and she didn't score until the fourth quarter. But when you've got players like they do, you've always got somebody else to step up and help pick you up when you need it. And Citron is, as Olivia Miles just said, is just a huge part of that.
And it was obvious that Liv was looking for Sony in that game. I mean, there were times where, that one where she drove down the lane, got triple teamed, and then like turned around and threw it back to the top of the key, and Sony hit that three. Like she didn't even look. Like she just knew that that's where Sony was going to be. You know what I mean? Because she got off of her feet like she was going to shoot. She's like, nope, that's not going to happen, and just dished it back. I mean,
everybody collapsed on her, and Citron's wide open.
It was unbelievable. And I would say, and I don't know if you there's no way you have this stat in front of you, but on most of Citron's makes, there was an assist by Miles. Like she was the one finding Sony the vast majority of the time and finding her wide open. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. There's no doubt about that.
That makes sense. Miles had 5 assists last night. Hidalgo had 5. And that's the other thing too, is even though Hidalgo wasn't having a great offensive night, she had a season high 7 steals, and now she's got the most steals for a sophomore in program history. So,
no doubt.
Again, they've all got different elements of their game where like you don't have to rely on just 1 or 2 players because any given player can.
Not a lot of teams in the country can say that, Sean. No, and that's why Notre Dame is who they are, and it's why come Monday they will most likely be the number 1 team in the country.
So that's the next question after USC handed number 1 UCLA its first loss of the season last night. Scale of 1 to 10. What chances are you giving Notre Dame to be the new number 1 when the polls come out Monday afternoon?
They haven't lost since November 30th. So correct. I give them a great chance because not only did the number 1 team lose, but Notre Dame is just winning, and the way that they are winning, you can't deny it. You know what I mean? They went from 3-2 this week. I think they go from 2-1 this week, or this coming week, because they're not just like backing into it. You know what I mean? It's not just because they're winning games; it's the manner in which they're winning games. And I think they've won 14 or 15 in a row. I mean,
17.
There
but
you
who's
go.
Counting?
You are, and that's your job. You're supposed to.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I mean, the way that they're winning and the fact that they haven't lost in the United States yet is still very impressive to me. They're absolutely going to be the number one team in the country, and they deserve to be.
I think they will be. I'll give it a 9 just because I am curious to see. Like, I don't know who else you would put at number 1 if it's not going to be Notre Dame. I don't think UCLA is going to stay there. And when you look at, do they have 2 losses? Yeah. And there are a couple of teams, that only have the 1 loss. UCLA obviously being one of them. But Notre Dame has obviously beaten the team that just beat the team that was undefeated. They have a win over USC. They have a win over Texas. They have a win over UConn. That's why Notre Dame rose from around, I think it was like 8 or 9 in that range after those 2 losses up to number 3, and had been sitting there for so long before South Carolina lost for the second time. And that's how they got to number 2. But, all 3 of those teams that I just mentioned, UConn, Texas, and USC were top 5 teams when Notre Dame beat them.
Yeah.
And again, like when you fact that you've got the head-to-head between Notre Dame and USC just beat UCLA. Like I said, I'll give it a 9. It should be a 10. Is it good for this team right now to be number 1? Would you want them to be number 1, especially when you're playing a ranked team that same day? Because, we'll clarify this. ACC women usually play on Sunday, but Notre Dame and Duke are playing Monday for the second straight year. It's part of a big Monday thing. So the polls are going to come out in the afternoon before the Duke game. So what happens in the Duke game is going to have no effect on where Notre Dame is in the polls when they come out,
as you say,
Monday afternoon. Yeah.
I mean, their resume is complete for the voting, is what you're saying. And it just depends on the makeup of the team, whether being number 1 is good or not. There's some teams that I think perform better when they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, that kind of a thing. I just don't think this team cares. I just think that they're going to keep doing what they're doing, and it doesn't matter the little number that's next to their name, because that's just who they are. And they've got a lot of veteran leadership, and they obviously have a next level coach. And I don't think she's going to allow it to get to their heads. I just don't think it's going to matter. I just don't. They don't ever talk about where they're ranked or anything like that. I mean, they deserve to be number 1, but I don't think, like, they've experienced loss, right? I mean, they know what it's like to lose because they lost 2 in a row, and it was ugly too. And so they know what it feels like to lose. They're not. That's not who they are. You know what I mean? So
the other thing. And I'm a little confused by what Connor's asking because he confused his teams. But Texas just beat South Carolina. That's how South Carolina got their second loss. So now Notre Dame has wins over teams, that have both beaten other elite teams. They have a win over USC, which just beat UCLA. They have a win over Texas, which just beat South Carolina. I believe it was last week they beat South Carolina, so they've, they basically got quality on top of quality, when you look at, net and all that different kind of stuff. And so I tend to agree. Like, I think that, honestly, there have been times where they've looked like they've been waiting for the next ranked team to come out, and have a chance to kind of prove themselves again, like that's when they really, like, the cream really rises to the top for them. So I think that regardless of what their ranking happens to be, I think that they'll be fully locked in when they host Duke on Monday night, because Duke's a good defensive team. It's going to be a good challenge. 2 of the next 3 games are against the 2 teams right behind them in the conference right now. Duke on Monday, and then NC State a week from Sunday.
Yeah, tough ones
down there in Raleigh. So that'll be a road game. So some big tests coming up for them. It's going to be.
Are you going to have a color person on Monday? Big Game Karen coming in?
I don't think Big Game Karen. I have not heard from Big Game Karen. I don't know if she's going to be here or not.
Had to ask.
So this got buried in the Super Bowl last week, and I figured I'd just mention this before we get, into another weekend. The NFL announced they're going to play its first game in Australia next year. There's also going to be a game next season. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to play a TBD opponent in Dublin, Ireland. Do you buy or sell the NFL in the international plan?
I mean, I buy it because they've been doing it, but they've been doing it like in Mexico. They've done it in England. They've been doing it, and they're just kind of broadening their horizons a little bit. I mean, the NFL is super popular overseas. I mean, it just is. And they've had a lot of success with the overseas games that they've had in the past. And so I guess I'm not all that surprised. Australia is a bit of a stretch. Like that's about as far away as you can get. And so I'm really curious to see how they kind of handle that with like TV and like, that whole deal. But I'm not surprised. I mean, I buy it. Look, the NFL is a global brand now. And that's what they've always wanted. There's no doubt about that. But the proof's in the pudding. When they have the games over there, they're selling out the stadiums. So yeah, it's a buy for me. And the NFL's sending crappy teams too. Sorry. They're sending crappy teams and they're selling out the state. You know what I mean? Like they send the Jaguars exactly right. And like
keep sending Jacksonville to London. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm kind of surprised they've never done an Ireland game before. When you think, considering how much they go to London and Ireland's right there, and college football has kind of made Dublin, their international spot, because it hasn't just been Notre Dame and Navy. We saw Florida State and Georgia Tech go there, and there have been some other teams. I think Nebraska and Northwestern went there a few years back. So, I mean, Australia is a pretty good stretch, like to get down there, like that acclimation, reacclimation. Yeah, that's right. Recruit the punters down there. So, I mean, I'm in on it. Why not? Again, like to me, I don't think it makes that much difference to us. We watch it on TV. What difference does it make where the game is played? And the NFL gets happy because they keep spreading themselves all over the world, trying to make more money because they don't have enough money. So why not?
Right.
I don't know. I'm going to throw this one at you.
Oh boy.
Did you see the AI heavy tribute that Fox did for Jimmy Johnson in the Super Bowl pregame show?
I did see that. Yes, I did.
What did you think of that? One, I think most people thought that after that, like, okay, you're just setting Jimmy Johnson up. He's going to retire. And
I thought that's what was happening. That's not what was happening?
He did not retire. No.
I thought that was sure what was happening.
When Kurt Menefee asked him, he was like, one day at a time. So,
okay.
Apparently the thinking is Fox doesn't have another Super Bowl for 4 years. So they wanted to make sure they paid tribute to Jimmy on a big stage because he's 81 years old and who knows if he'll be around 4 years from now. The AI part itself, I just thought was like, did we really need, like AI Arkansas Jimmy Johnson, walking, doing the walk and talk and
AI Jerry Jones was on there too.
That's true. But Jerry didn't really say anything.
I know, but still, I was like, oh, look, Jerry Jones. Wow. It was, you could tell it was AI, obviously. Right. And, I thought it was a retirement thing, to be perfectly honest with you, because I kind of missed the setup for it, but then I saw the whole thing. So I thought it was like, hey, he's retiring, whatever, going off. Because especially when they came back to him and he's like crying and the whole deal, right? So I thought this was it. Like, hey, he's retiring. So I'm actually kind of shocked by that. It was okay. Like, it was a fun use of AI, I guess. It was definitely strange, but
strange would be my word. I just thought it was very, very strange, very odd, whatever you want to call it. And again, like the whole, like the AI generated, they had him in an Arkansas uniform where he played in college, and they like the AI altered his voice so he was supposed to sound younger and all that stuff, and then he kind of progressed through the the Miami years and the coaching years and the Cowboys and all that. It was just, again, it was very odd. It was just the oddest part was they did it all. Felt like it's like, okay, Jimmy's going to announce he's retiring now. And then it's like, well, See you next year.
That was odd. Okay. I still thought he was retired. Like I would have been shocked next year when he was back. So, because that was a nice fitting way to send him out, I guess. Look, it was an outside the box kind of a thinking on how to do something like that. And he has had a very storied, history with football. And so, and I think a lot of people probably didn't know his history. Like there's probably a good generation of people that only know him as an analyst.
A lot of younger people.
So like it was educational, but it was still kind of weird. Like, I don't think, it just was.
I forgot that I had this in here from Andre. He said, do you believe Notre Dame sports are trending toward becoming a championship level organization, not just football? I mean, obviously women's basketball has been a power for a long time. Lacrosse has won back-to-back national championships. Fencing is really good, but other than that, I mean, I could be leaving, soccer's won some championships here and there throughout the years. Like,
I mean, they've got,
I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
They got 26 varsity sports. It is virtually impossible to have every single one of them be championship contenders on a regular basis. That's just not realistic. But I agree with you. They've had some that have been championship contenders for a long time. Everyone that you mentioned, this is not a new thing for them. You know what I mean? Like the lacrosse team has always been really good. The women's soccer team has always been really good. The men's soccer team kind of goes up and down. But, fencing has always been really, really good. It's just football now that has kind of not transcended, but gotten to the point of competing for national championships. And so everybody's kind of eyes are on that. I don't think it's a whole lot different. I think everything is.
Hockey's been
where it is.
Hockey's been a contender.
They're dipped a little now.
The
they're
last
young
few years, but they played in some national championship games and Frozen Fours and stuff like that. But
baseball team's really young. Softball team's got a new coach. I'm not privy to every single, varsity sport on campus. They're never going to be the Stanford of athletics. How about that? Stanford wins.
I was going to say, like Stanford, they've always focused on that Sears Cup or, whatever they call it. Now,
but they play so many other weird sports like field hockey,
they've got sailing,
and
surfing, and
all kinds of nut stuff. So I mean, look, they're always going to prioritize athletics, and they're always going to be good. I don't think anything's really changed. I think it's just the torch has been handed from one athletic director to the next, and they're still going to be looking for ways to be elite, and that's where they're going to end up being.
Yeah. I don't think they're necessarily, trending overall. It's just it's a matter of because they're each kind of their own little independent fiefdoms. Like just got to get it going. I mean, obviously, I think everyone would be pretty happy if men's basketball can find a gear with the recruiting that Shrewsbury has done, here over the next couple of years. That would help quite a bit. I think that would raise the stature quite a bit. The profile overall. When the two basketballs and football are all good at the same time, everybody's going to be happy, I think.
Right. Agreed.
So, Vince, the 6th installment of Matt Damon's Jason Bourne series is supposed to be released this year. I haven't heard an official release date yet, but sometime within the next few months. Where are you on the Bourne saga? I don't think we've ever talked about Bourne before.
We have never, because I've never seen a single one of them.
Really?
Yeah.
This shocks me.
I know. And it's the funny thing is, I want to say it was over this past summer. For whatever reason, I was like, I need to start watching those. And there was nowhere that I could get it, with all the streaming services that I have. There was no way to get it. So I was like, well, guess I'm not going to do that. So it's like on my to-do list. Like I want to see them, but like I have no idea what even the premise is. So you'll have to enlighten me as to who he is, what is it about? But like having 6 movies is impressive. But to me, it's very similar to like the Mission Impossible series. I've never seen a bunch of those either. So but they keep making them. So they must be popular.
So here's the nutshell. Matt Damon plays Jason Bourne, and I think the first one came out in like 2002 or something. It was like that.
2002, because I just looked when I saw the question. I started looking again to see if I could watch one. So 2002.
So without giving anything away so Matt Damon in the first one wakes up. He's floating in the middle of the ocean. and this fishing boat comes along, pulls him out of the water. He's got a couple of bullets in his back. They take a couple of bullets out of his back, but then also fishing boat captain, also happens to be apparently a pretty good surgeon, because he pulls this little microfish chip out of Matt Damon's back, and it turns out to be a Swiss bank account. But he basically is a spy who has total amnesia, can't remember anything about who he is, and that's how the whole thing kind of goes. And so it's a combination of him having the amnesia and the agency that he works for viewing him also as basically the enemy. And so the whole saga continues from there. I think you'd like it quite a bit. I'm shocked that you haven't seen even one of them before.
I kind of am as well, to be perfectly honest with you. Because
it is hard to find. There've been times when I've looked on the streamers, because it's because I love them. I've watched all of them. The last one, I think Jason Bourne is what it was called, was the worst of the first 5. So hopefully it's been 10 years or something like that. Hopefully they figured out something to kind of kick it, into another gear by bringing it back. But if I'm flipping around and TNT or whatever it happens to be, and there's a Bourne movie on, I can just sit there and, find myself 45 minutes to an hour later, still watching. The first one to me is the best one. So I would definitely recommend watching that, because obviously that's going to lay the basis, but they are hard to find sometimes on the streamers for some reason.
And that was my issue. I would like to watch them. Not sure I'm going to go out of my way, but we'll see. You know what I mean? As far as purchasing them, that kind of a thing. But I'm all for it, because it does sound like I enjoy those types of movies. You know what I mean? I do enjoy those things. What's the one with
DK says not a spy and assassin. I mean, he's really kind of both, basically. Okay. So if you want to get technical, he's a spy who is an assassin.
Okay.
Because he does have to go, undetected. And I guess, he's not like Tom Cruise, where he's, spying on whoever, but he's working behind the scenes, staying off the grid and stuff like that, pulling off different assignments and those kind of
things. If you know of a service that has it, let me know, because I will definitely tune in if I can.
All right. I'll see if I can find it. I'll do some digging around. I love the first one. The first one is literally
I'm down. I'm always looking for something good to watch.
And it's Matt. I mean, you like Matt Damon, right?
I do.
You're not anti-Matt Damon?
No, gosh, no. Yeah. Not at all.
Andre says Mission Impossible, really good too. And I got, I'd seen the original, which was going on 30 years ago at this point.
Oh, the first one came out when I was in high school.
Yeah. And I hadn't necessarily seen all of them, but then after, Top Gun Maverick came out a couple of years ago, I think it was the next summer, they did another Mission Impossible, and we were so into, Tom Cruise at that point. We went and saw the, the next Mission Impossible, but it was part 1 of 2. And so part 2 of that Mission Impossible is coming out, I think, in May or June or something like that.
Okay. So you're in, because you already saw.
So long story short, I've gone back and I've rewatched all of the Mission Impossibles. I think Mission Impossible 2 is probably my least favorite. Mission Impossible 3 had Philip Seymour Hoffman, I believe it was.
Oh, okay.
Was that one? That was really good. I was kind of bummed, actually. Spoiler alert here, that they killed Emilio Estevez in the first Mission Impossible. I felt like he would have been a nice little sidekick to go along with Tom Cruise as the series went on.
Coach
especially
Bombay.
When you look at, you haven't seen much of Emilio since then, really.
Coach Bombay. That's what I know of Emilio Estevez.
Coach Bombay, is that Mighty Ducks?
Mighty Ducks, yeah.
See, that's one that I don't think I've ever seen in full. It's Mighty Ducks.
Disney Plus.
Yeah. USMA, I agree. I prefer Bourne to MI. I totally agree with that. I would go Bourne over Mission Impossible, but Mission Impossible still fairly. The only thing about Mission Impossible is feels like they're all a good 20 minutes too long. Like they could condense some stuff,
Gotcha.
move them along a little bit faster. But
Makes sense.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. Hope everybody had a good one today. Yeah, there was, by the way, I don't know if you were looking at the counter in here. It was pretty obvious when Brian's show ended.
Yes, it was.
When the number doubled, I think, as
yeah.
soon as...
Yeah. I noticed. I did notice because I went over and I looked. I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. Have a great weekend. Have a great Valentine's Day. I'm off to eat my pizza now.
Nice.
And, I'll be
nice.
Don't
forget the candle.
Very happy. Yeah.
Keep the romance alive.
Now, will you and Jesse be on Monday?
I believe that's the plan.
Okay. Because I've obviously got a basketball game. So
correct. I believe that is the plan. I usually have that thing up on here, but I don't see it, of course. But yeah, that is the plan.
All right. Sounds good. Have a great weekend. Have a great Valentine's Day, and we will talk to you next week on IB Nation Sports Talk.